So welcome to everyone at home, and thank you guys for coming. Like I said, it's an intimate setting today, but I'm really excited about talking about the project we've been working on with the Resilience by Design Lab. We are, first of all, I'm going to mention having an open house on April 17th to showcase all of our work. We're actually putting together an exhibit at the library. So on April 17th at 11:30, we'll kick it all off and have a talk at noon, so you can see this project, but then all of the different projects at the lab. And so, can't read this far, so. So the Resilience by Design Lab here on campus is part of the Disaster and Emergency Management Group. And we have three kind of areas that we focus on. These are our kind of key themes of where researchers, faculty, postdoc fellows, students, and youth explore community resilience, disaster risk reduction, social innovation, and creativity. We also work to contribute to a culture of resilience. And we do a lot of adult-youth partnerships, looking at collaboration, innovation, and creativity, so creative action research. And a lot of our research focuses on visual storytelling. And so what I wanted to do is walk you through one of the projects that we're working on, so you can kind of see how we set it up, how we're working in the community, and I can talk about what we're doing with that, and then take any questions. So the project is called Youth Voices Rising and Recovery and Resilience in Wood Buffalo. So it's specifically responding to the Fort McMurray wildfire that happened in 2006. And we're working with action research, creative arts, and other visual storytelling methods to understand where young people are being heard in the recovery process, and then also to do projects that actually strengthen that possibility for their voices to be heard. And what's really interesting about this project is we designed a way of working, but we're not actually specifically doing that. We've kind of been responding to the partners that we've met and to the people that we've met. But the project does have 4 specific goals. And those are to support and empower Wood Buffalo youth during the early recovery from the wildfire by providing opportunities for them to share what they've experienced in environments that are supportive. The other one is to build young people's capacities and capabilities to engage as citizens in the short and longer term recovery through visual storytelling, action research, and other methods. To enhance the capacity of existing local community-based organizations and through training and a range of visual storytelling methods, photography, arts, participatory video, etc. And then to draw on the expertise and insights of the residents themselves to contribute to an understanding of disaster resilience and youth engagement. So right now we're a year into the project in a couple months. It's a 2-year project, and so we're working till the end of this year. And we actually went through like 10 steps, and I think that when you think about coming in, a disaster's happened, and you have been given funds to research with the goals that we have. You know, we had actually designed a purely participatory video type of project, and also doing focus groups. But as we got there, we decided, well, let's find out what's happening in the community. Who are the people that are working with young people? What's already being done? So we actually started out by just engaging with the community to kind of understand the sector, to understand what youth organizations were working, and also to understand the different First Nations communities and the rural communities besides what was just happening in Fort McMurray itself. So that was really important to kind of get a broader scope of what was going on and to just talk to people and explain we're here to listen, and we have some ideas around creative art action research. Here are our goals. What are some ideas that you might have? So we looked at different publications around young people to kind of understand the sector a little bit more. And then we hosted a youth ideas incubator where we invited 10 young people from supporting like 5 different organizations to come in and work with us on a social media campaign, because that's what started to come out from talking to different young people of how to engage. So that seemed to make a lot more sense. And the young people actually came up at the Ideas Incubator with the name Youth Voices WB. And so this is kind of the campaign that I'll talk to and explain a lot of how we worked with that campaign to engage young people in the community. So then once we had the campaign, we supported creative arts activities all summer with different partners, and I'll show you those. And then we specifically ran the Youth Voices campaign during the mayoral elections. So they hadn't had a new mayor in 20 years, and they'd just gone through the fire. So a lot of the councilors and the mayor were going to change over. And so we knew that youth was a focus, and the council had actually just created a youth engagement strategy, but it was released the day before the fire. So it hadn't really been integrated, and then of course the council was focused on the recovery. So a lot of the real focus on youth hadn't really happened. So we wanted to run this campaign in a way that would kind of say, hey, like, let's prioritize youth. And so we specifically set it up to run in September, October of last year. So we ran it September 29th through October 27th. And then the next 5 steps, we basically worked with local research assistants. And once we ran the campaign, we now had a reason to talk to a lot of young people. So our 3 research assistants, age 17 to 26, conducted the majority of 20 interviews. So we were also building their capacity, but then having young people talk to young people. It was a way to engage them in understanding how they experienced the fire, how they felt their voice was being heard, what ideas they had, and then also talking about the media that they created. So we now have that data set and just finished up the last interview last week. We are producing reports on the concerns that we've seen from that campaign, and I'll show you some of that. And we want to support youth listening and action activities, so we've been meeting with the municipality to see how we can support them to do that rather than us setting things up, so it's more community-based. And then we're collaborating on partner-driven, strength-based creative action research activities with 3 specific communities. We're working with 3 First Nations communities that we had been partnering with 2 of them for the last year, doing photography exhibits and photography workshops. And we're holding a strength-based workshop with the Banff Center at the end of this next month. And we'll be moving towards a more strength-based approach for the next year with our partners. And then we're also producing case studies and journal articles, and the lab itself is working on a guide. So that's the overview, but let's actually look at like the campaign and actually hear from some of the young people themselves, which is much more interesting than hearing me talk. So in thinking about doing a social media campaign, what we wanted to do is we wanted something that was really well branded and like a really proper social media campaign. So we have a research assistant from UVic who works at UVic and with us, who had an expertise in running social media campaigns. So she was running that and really kind of doing a lot of the guidance, as well as her name is Ashley, and also Tiffany from our lab have a lot of expertise in that area. So we wanted to run a really good campaign, and we created a beautiful marketed campaign with the logo so that we could kind of create a brand as well around the importance of youth voice. So here are a few pictures of the young people that participated in coming up with the name and the platforms that we would use. And so, whoop, that's backwards, let's go forward. And so as we ran the campaign, we decided to run it, well, the young people told us to run it on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We were going to do Snapchat, but Snapchat doesn't retain data. So we have to remember that this is also a research project. And what's interesting about being a research project is that in working with ethics, how do you post things up? How does that become data? So we had to work through a lot of the ethical concerns. So basically, any content that we posted through the campaign, we needed parental permission for anyone under age 18. We have been working with ethics to try to get that down to 16 because that's the standard in Alberta for people, young people, to be able to access healthcare. So we thought that young people at that age have the agency to make their own decisions, but that's still being discussed by the ethics committee. So at this point, so that actually was a factor in some of the partners that we were going to work with, because like the Gay Straight Alliance, it would have been more difficult for some of the young people. They didn't want to approach their parents. So we ended up not working with certain communities. So that's a very interesting thing between a campaign, which allows, all these sites allow young people 13 or older to post, versus a research project, which I think is quite fascinating. So we ended up working with different communities to create content. And we also then posted the option that young people themselves could post up. And we had ways for them to do that. So if they were over 13, they could actually do that on their own sites. Through the campaign, not one young person posted their own content. And I think that that's also fascinating to know, because I think that we have this idea that when young people are engaged, that or that there's a campaign created, that all of a sudden young people will respond. But actually it takes working through partners. We couldn't come in there and just run a workshop. We ran everything through different social profits, is what they're called in Fort McMurray and the area. So it was quite fascinating from that standpoint as well, from research. Here are all of the different partners that we worked with. So I ended up being up there about 8 times last year, and also we had local research assistants, working with our partners. So I mean, it was everyone from radio stations to the Art Foundry, working with artists, the Justin Slade Youth Foundation to do an activity, and we worked, like I said, with 2 youth centers in First Nations communities once we'd built up relationships with them. We worked with a faith-based organization doing a talent show night. We worked with the Friendships Center involved in the Ideas Incubator. So we actually tried to, in those first 6 months, really understand what was happening, who was doing activities. So like with the YMCA, they were already having a leadership organization meetings for a 6-week time. So we came in on one of those nights and did an activity. Justin Slade Foundation had a leadership group, so we came in there. The 2 communities we worked with in the First Nations communities were having a summer work program. So we designed week-long workshops with their youth workers there. So by taking that time to understand what was happening in community, we were able to kind of know what was going on and tailor the activities around creating content that youth would want to contribute to the campaign. We also did sticky note walls, where we had those in the library and at Justin Slade and at other places. So Justin Slade created a big graffiti wall, which I'll show you, that they put the sticky notes on. So we just had this amazing reach in involving different youth. So as you can see here, we had podcasts, poetry, song. We had an art installation, collages, graffiti, drawings, a storyboard session. We did a photo booth at the a Rotary Club event where we launched the campaign. So that's everyone from the lab. As you can see, we had all kinds of props for young people to do, take photos. We did photography. Something we also learned, I think, from a research standpoint while we were there. So at the Rotary Club, like I said, we didn't, without permission, we couldn't post something up. So we had a photo booth that young people could come, and a lot of them were taking photos of themselves and tagging Youth Voices WB. We probably had 40 different young people do that. Only 1 showed up on our Instagram feed. That's because they were all private. So if they're private, we're not going to actually be able to see it. So we have none of that for data. So these ideas that we're going to have this campaign and immediately be able to understand what's going on, you might not actually have access, to that. It doesn't mean that that wasn't successful in getting more people engaged and creating this brand, but it's not actually, you're not able to actually see that or have that being shared. So I wanted to show you some of the different partnerships that we did. So this partnership was just amazing. So the Bridge, 91.1 FM, and the District Studio. The District Studio is a new organization in town that they were just getting ready and starting to get funding to launch something called the Youth Soundforth Youth. That it was an initiative where they are building a production studio and are going to be engaging with young people through song. So the campaign was kind of a way to pilot what they wanted to do, to be able to show to funders and also kind of show how they wanted to work. So they did a call out for young people that they would produce an original song for them. They would provide a song coach, they would help with some of the songwriting, and professionally produce a song. So they ended up producing 7 songs related to the campaign and to the question, our research question, what would you do to make community better? Not every song related to that, and we didn't say, give like those specific, we weren't really like hardcore about it, because we knew that really resilience for young people is that they're involved, that they're engaged, that they are being shown that they have something to say. And so this process, of doing that, we've had some amazing stories about how the young people themselves, have felt connected to community through that process. And I wanted to show you one person who was engaged. So if we can play the video, we'll do that. So this is Kyler. So before you start, I'll read a quick quote from him. So he was performing at a showcase of the District Studio and the Bridge did, and he said, "I know we can start something here that is bigger than all of us. We can pull the community together in a way that it hasn't been before. People of all nationalities all gathering in one place. You stopping by other than going out and partying with friends and accepting one another's differences for one common cause, to make music and be heard." So like he was really connecting with the studio through that. So let's hear what he has to say. Oh.
My name's Kyler McDonald. I'm 17 years old. I'm originally from Saskatchewan, Onion Lake, and I'm a hip hop artist. I just want to get like my voice really like heard, because I got like some things to say. I got like some stories to tell, and I know that there's a lot of people out there who can like relate to what I'm saying. I guess it's really like walking through like the lesson that I learned. Like for me, like me telling my story in the song. I mean, I think a lot of kids can relate to that. Well, most of the kids that like I know over here can relate to that. So like once they hear it, they're gonna be like maybe motivated to come even like to the studio, like the new one coming up here. I like some like positive feedback, but of course there's gonna be that few that are gonna be like, oh, he's talking about like going to jail and stuff like that. But man, I don't know, I'm not trying to hide who I am or anything, like this stuff really happened to me. Like I don't want people to judge me, you could say. I mean, I guess that's how they could react, if anything.
So Kyler, it's been great working with Kyler through our partner. Kyler has now performed 3 times in Fort McMurray and has not been back to jail since he turned 18 and has been part of the campaign. And he's moved down to Calgary to try to pursue a music career. So, or maybe he's in Edmonton. So he has a great story, and it's been great to have him engaged in the campaign. So that's kind of one partnership, that we worked with, where what we were doing connected with something they wanted to do. So we just had a platform that they could kind of launch their ideas. And so the next one is Pamela. And I'm going to read a quick quote from her from the podcast. She was part of a podcast. And it said, "When it affects us, it should involve us. We're the future generation. We're going to be here making the decisions next. How are you going to make our world better for us and our children and their children if you don't give us the opportunity?" And so she responded to this question at a talent show, and I'm just going to play a short clip from what she had to say.
If you had all the power, how would you make life better in your community? Think of the things that we could do now, ourselves. So I think how we can make life better in the community is to be part of our community. And I think that's pretty cool. So, yeah.
So Pamela is awesome, you know. So she's been really engaged in other activities as well. And like I said, we did a podcast. We also worked with the Nicholas Art Foundation through the Art Foundry. And the person we worked with, Raina Lee, was amazing. We basically worked with her and said, okay, do 2 workshops where young people create art and we'll put it in the campaign. And she came back and said, I'm going to create an art installation instead. And so basically created this installation with those wings that you just saw, where young people came in and answered the research question by painting wings or feathers that answered the question, and then also were put into this art installation that is now on display at another organization we've been working with called Some Other Solutions. So each of those feathers has a different idea for what young people want. So like this feather from Atia that says, "Separate group home for someone with autism, better support care for people with disability." So all of this, that also became data for working through what are some of the different responses that young people have to this question. During the Connect Youth podcast, we invited Pamela and Nick and Aishwarya and Langa and TJ all to come and talk about the importance of youth voice. So we actually did 2 podcasts right before we launched the campaign that spoke to why youth voice was important, why the young people thought youth voice was important. And so Nick, in one of the photo workshops, took this awesome photo, Be the Wiser, Walk Away. And he said in the podcast, "I took this photo to show someone walking away from alcohol. Whenever I'm with my friends and they drink, they can turn into another person. I don't think it's good for our community. People should walk away." And so he really had, you know, a powerful message that he wanted to share. And I'm hopeful that he'll continue to work with us when we do another photography workshop this summer, because he's an amazing photographer. We also did photo workshops. And so this is this is a shot of working with the YMCA with Miriam and Zoe, and they're making a heart. And they basically took this photo with the tagline, "Stop Racism." And then we worked in, like I said, in 2 different communities. This is in the Chippewa Prairie First Nation. And we did a week-long workshop with the question, what would you do to make community better? And the young people took photos, and some of those photos came into the campaign, and some of them did not. It's part of the process of OCAP in working in First Nations communities, which is prioritizing ownership, control, access, and permission. And so through the workshops, we actually spent time looking at, like, what would you create in your community? What would you drop? What would you keep? To create a report from this community and also the fort in Fort McKay. And those reports are actually not public through discussions with the community. So those reports are being used within the community itself, talking to tribal council, and then talking to other people who can respond to those concerns rather than being in a public forum due to concerns of some of the stereotypes that people might have from community. And Those discussions have actually led to this process of doing a workshop next summer that will be a more strength-based focus, a more positive focus on, what's great about community, and then we want to do a show. And so some of the photos from here might come into the show, but that'll all be determined, by the people involved. So that's kind of part of the research as well. So can you quickly show, I'll just show a clip really of, oh gosh, sorry, of young people. There was a young woman, Roshana, who performed a dance that we included in the campaign. So that's a jingle dance, and she also had a photo taken of her called Tradition as part of the campaign as well. And so we worked with 10 young people in Janvier, and basically we didn't do this in isolation, of course. We also worked with the youth workers. They have a youth center there called Sekwaha, so we trained 2 people as co-facilitators. And worked with them. We then supported the youth engagement workshop. We then co-produced a youth priorities publication, like I said. The photos were and are incredibly powerful. And so for the community, they wanted to really show everyone the talent. And so we professionally framed the photos, and they've been using those. They just did a display at a youth elder dinner. They've had different events where they might take 2 or 3 and use them as discussion points. But by having them professionally done, it just also then kind of legitimizes young people's voice and really has been making an impact in that community. And then we've also just, during our discussion there, realized that as part of the recovery that the youth workers themselves might need some extra training. So we worked with them on a grant for the Red Cross to get some additional training, which they got, the grant. So that's been great. So they're starting on some leadership training and different wellness training. And then we were also working with the Fort McKay First Nations, and 20 young people there through their summer work program. As part of the workshop, not only was there a community display during that week and a dinner, but we also, in both communities, had a meeting with one person from the tribal council, very small, intimate meetings to discuss what was being talked about, so that there was immediate feedback, to what was going on, and some of those discussions helped to inform the report that we created for the community. And so similarly, we worked with youth leaders and are continuing to work with them, and we supported the workshop, the publication, and then we also trained Girls Inc., one of the partners that they work with, in using photography so that they could maybe continue some of that. So that there's the report in the left-hand corner. What's been great about working up there is our partners just come up with ideas, and then we try to support them where they can. So the district studio and the radio station, they're doing bi-monthly talent shows now under Sound Force Collective. But basically the Youth Voices project allowed them to launch that initiative. And so in November last year, they had this huge showcase where about 10 young people performed. And what was amazing at that is that because we had been focused on the mayors and kind of during that campaign raising youth voice, we had actually recorded the mayors answering how they might respond to young people if they were elected. So we had a direct line to the mayor, Don Scott, when he was elected. So we called his office and invited him to the event. And he came and spoke, and he talked about the power and the importance of youth voice. So that was another way of trying to create those listening spaces and using youth voice as a platform to do that. And so Russell Thomas's great Twitter feed says, "Love the fact that Mayor Don Scott just invited a theater full of young people to send him direct emails with their ideas and concern. Youth matter, youth are our future," which he did. It was awesome. And so here you can see these are the different mayoral candidates. I didn't record the videos. Our two young research assistants did all of the video recording, which was amazing. And then you can see here, remember I said there was a sticky note wall made by Justin Slade Youth Foundation? So that's the sticky note wall that they had kind of done some graffiti on. And we had it at the Youth Voices event at that talent showcase. And the mayor, he was like, "This is great. I want this in my office." So here I am dropping it off, and it now prominently is on display in his office. And every now and then I'll see people interviewing him on social media, and it'll be right behind him, which is really cool. But it's also really, I think, awesome because of the branding. That branding is right there, in his office. This is one more example of kind of that power of the Youth Voices brand. We got a call from the Multicultural Center, that said, "We're holding a Human Rights Day. Who could we contact?" And because we had been working with young people, we were able to call Miriam, and she worked with them, and she gave an amazing talk on the power of youth voice. And just saying what she said, unfortunately I don't have a clip, but she said, "Youth are an integral part of society. Understanding that inaction has consequences. Inaction allows unconscious biases to propagate. This is especially dangerous, not just because youth voices won't be heard, but also because it leads to intolerance rather than inclusion. Mentorship and discussion will allow you not only to educate the youth, but you will also learn that we have a lot to share." So the insight of these talented young people is quite amazing. And so, who did we connect to in the campaign? The campaign is over. And through that campaign, we connected to more than 600 Wood Buffalo youth. Everything from the Ideas Incubator to the creation of the art installation to the storyboards. 140 youth did sticky notes at one of our events. We had sticky note walls all over the city. We did a survey through one of the high schools. We had youth at the talent showcase. And then, of course, engaging in the campaign. And what's interesting about the campaign is that we did not have a high engagement in the campaign itself. And that's something that we need to look at, just the timing. We didn't end up going into the schools because in the first year of the recovery, the school boards basically said, "Our teachers are stressed." Let's not do anything. And by the time we came back in, because of the timing of the mayoral campaign, I met with all the principals, but we didn't have time to really build, anything. So, you could do that, but you also have to recognize you're coming into this particular environment around recovery. And if we had pushed something, it wouldn't have worked at all, and it might have actually then played out negatively on something like Youth Voices, which we think holds a potential in the community. And I'll show you why. After I show a video. So this is just a couple-minute video that shows some of the photos that were in the campaign, and the song is by Willie and Genevieve, who will be at the our Resilience by Design showcase. So we're having them come in and perform.
The trees stand bare in the warm August air. Black bark bears witness to the flames.
before the forest looks the same. But we'll press on. Together we'll join in the song. 'Cause there's strength in waiting. Together we're making a change. There's gonna be change.
Smoke clears the skies, birds are flying high. Small paws make prints in the coals.
The river keeps running, singing of what's coming. It's time to return, wandering souls. It's time to return, wandering souls. 'Cause we'll press on. Together we'll join in the song. 'Cause there's strength in waiting. Together we're making a change. There's gonna be change. 'Cause there's strength in waiting. Together we're making a change. There's gonna be change.
So that's kind of an overview of some of the campaign. And so what's next? So the campaign ended October 27th, and we're now looking at nearly 400 responses to the campaign question and working on a report specifically for Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo. And then we're looking at other articles. We just wrote a music article for the Engaged Scholar on kind of the musical representation of disaster. And what's incredibly exciting is, like I said, we built up this brand. And you know, in a typical research project, you would have to walk away. We have our data. But because it was such a strong brand and such a great idea in the community of this idea of bringing youth voices together, Some Other Solutions, which is a crisis intervention center, came to us when we'd proposed getting this brand out and said, we want the brand. And so they have this branding of Some Other Solutions as crisis prevention, but they felt that they do a lot of mentorship and a lot of work with the community, and so they wanted this brand that they could be then using to be elevating youth voice in a way that's not necessarily connected to crisis, although can support it. So as of February 1st, we've handed over the brand. It's no longer ours. They're running with it. And then there's also talk about they're working with the municipality to have a youth-led app, that youth-designed app, that would highlight what's happening for youth in Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo, that the app would not only showcase that, but then also have a button for if someone is overdosing for drugs or needs other links to crisis. So we're quite excited that they are taking over the brand. So when the project ends, and now, like I said, it's not our brand anymore. And so I think that that's the value that research can bring when you're doing this kind of creative action research. But you're also then doing things at a really high professional level. You know, that you're creating something that can live on in the community as long as it's responsive to the community. And here's their first post from Some Other Solution. They're proud to welcome Youth Voices Wood Buffalo as part of our organization. Stay tuned for updates as we launch an exciting new chapter. So it's been amazing to kind of see how the brand has been taking off. So there was a study recently with Justin Slade, and it's like, oh my gosh, look. You know, so it's starting to become a brand that's being used in community, which is very exciting. And then our knowledge, you know, creation for research is, like I said, we're working on a report, journal articles. We're working on a guide and a framework based on what we've learned from this project and other projects through the lab. And then also getting ready to go to some conferences related to my area, that a lot of what we've been doing is communication for social change. in the context of disasters. So we'll be attending some conferences related to that, but then also disaster risk reduction as well and disaster recovery. The key issues that we're seeing so far that we're building on and the report will focus on is engagement, education, volunteerism, transportation, and kind of what we call stop this issues, stop racism, stop drugs. And here you can see those 5 areas. So engagement, education, volunteerism, transportation, and stop this issues. So we've also been working with the municipality who is also engaging with young people around these 5 issues to figure out how they can be incorporated into the work they're doing. And then here's just a sneak peek at our framework that is, I should have put big draft on it because it's in development right now. But we, really the framework we're developing is this idea of when you're coming in after disaster or during disaster, that focus on people and really looking at who is already working with young people and who are the youth leaders. So a focus on people and relationships. Understanding place, and people's connection to that place. So for example, one of the safe spaces, one of the organizations is downtown, and the fire, because of the fire, a lot of people moved away from downtown into the suburbs, and the transportation didn't always align right afterwards. So as a recommendation, it might be, okay, if place is really important, look at the safe spaces for youth so that as an immediate response, you could actually be making sure that youth can get there with the transportation they use. And then purpose. Like, why do youth want to engage with us? Like, they need to feel that they have something to say and that they're there for a reason. One of the reasons we ended up doing photography instead of participatory video, which is my background, is that when we were touring one of the youth centers, they had 10 photo cameras from a previous project. So they wanted to be able to use those cameras. So why come in and try to force something that isn't there? And so we basically designed a photo voice project instead of a participatory video project, Unfortunately, I love doing photo voice, but, So, another time. So, but I think that that's important to make sure that something, that you're being responsive. And then right now what we're doing is we're now working more deeply with our partners. So the Chippewa Prairie First Nation, Fort McKay First Nation, and then we're also going to be working with the Lake Athabasca Youth Council at a workshop coming up. And so we're focusing on deepening our engagement, looking at community as strength as a workshop, bringing everyone together for a 3-day retreat, a lot of youth workers and youth leaders and elders from each community. Then we're doing creative research activities around that theme. So the Angel Wings, the Fort McKay and Sequoia Janvier wanted to learn how to do that. So we created a workshop that the artist went out and taught them and got all the supplies so that they're already starting to paint their feathers. So we'll have 2 more sets of wings, that it's based on what the question they want to ask. And then we hope to do a youth-centric exhibit at the end of the year in Fort McMurray to kind of present all of this, what the youth want to present. And so here just one photo of how we're continuing to work with our partners. So this was in Sequoia Janvier at a youth elder dinner where we just did a very basic angel wing exhibit that we'll also be doing at our open house. So, and I'm going to finish with the quote from Pamela from Sequoia. She says, "Don't underestimate our youth. They have the strength to flourish where most would fail. Resilience is very different than being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fall, but you keep going." And to me, that's one of the best descriptions of resilience that I've ever seen. And that's it. Thank you.